You might have noticed that there is a winning spirit within the United States. Competition is at the core of the country's culture, and no matter the challenge, it's always about being the best.
Even when it's the best at being the worst. For instance, did you know that the USA are leaders when it's regarding prison system issues?
They have been holding the world record of the greatest number of prisoners for years now, actually. But I don't think there's any kind of reward for that.
Land of freedom, you say? Well, not so much. According to the World Prison Brief, more than 2 million people were incarcerated in the US in 2016.
It's clearly huge, but also quite hard to visualize. However, you will see that overpopulation is not the only problem within the American prison system. So in this video, we'll talk about everything that makes this system so peculiar.
Rest assured, because we're here to give you a clear picture of the situation. So get comfortable and let's get started.
The prison world is a very large topic, so first we need to understand the specificities behind the American prison system. Yes, there are many similarities with other countries, but there are still a couple of things that need your attention.
We will make it easy for you by breaking down the different terms, and should you already be familiar with this topic, consider it a refresh. That being said, let's start with the difference between jail and prison, because even though people confuse both terms, they happen to be two different concepts.
In theory, jails are facilities locally managed by a city or a county and are meant for newly arrested people to wait for the trial or serve a short sentence. But prisons, on the other hand, are operated by a state government or the Federal Bureau of Prisons for people who are sentenced to imprisonment for a longer period of time.
Now, these correctional facilities can either be public, which means that they are operated by either the state or federal government, but they can also be private facilities. This means that they're built, owned and operated by a private company that contracts with the government while being allowed to make a profit.
So how about we recreate the typical journey of a so-called criminal through the American prison system? A crime has allegedly been committed or someone's accused of reprehensible behavior. Then the suspect is arrested and risks being temporarily put in jail to wait for trial. Keep in mind that when it happens, nobody's been recognized guilty yet.
And it's only once you're in jail that the reality of this fucked up system is revealed. Because jail rhymes with bail, and together they make one hell of a chorus.
It was a bad pun, but it's so true though. Because if you want to wait for trial back home, and above all as a free person, you need to pay a bail.
Bail is this amazing concept when a judge determines an amount of money that is supposedly meant to assure the court that you'll come for trial. If you do show up, you get your money back.
So you're basically buying integrity. Quick question, since when money accounts for trustiness, and as the majority of people in jail are living in poverty, they just can't bail themselves out.
So now you're stuck, and the average time spent in jail waiting for trial can vary up from several weeks to several months, depending where you're locked up. In the Bronx, in New York City, the average time to resolve a trial was of 988 days, so roughly around 2.7 years.
And unlike prisons, jails are not even designed for longer stays. That means no comfort, less or no activities, and also fewer rehabilitation programs.
And since you're locked up, you can't go to work, can't pay rent, can't feed your children even, and that leads to your life falling apart and your chances to be back in jail rising up.
To avoid this awful turn of event, you can also decide to borrow money from bail bond companies. They usually have their numbers directly in the custody cell to clearly take advantage of you in your most vulnerable moment.
If you choose this option, you can wait for your trial out of jail, but you won't get all your money back. The bail bond company will, of course, keep a nice percentage.
Keep in mind that 74% of people in jail are not actually convicted, which means that the bail system just wipes his ass with the presumption of innocence.
Innocent till proven guilty, just as long as you can pay.
Another way to minimize your time spent in jail is for you to plead guilty, even when you're innocent. Most of the time, you get offered a plea deal, meaning that in exchange for you to plead guilty, you'll get a quick trial and a bargain on your sentence.
And this leads too many innocent people to choose this option because their bail was way too high for them to pay in the first place. It's also the fastest solution when you just can't afford to wait for trial, especially if people are relying on you.
But pleading guilty also means that you'll get a record, and having a criminal past pretty much fucks up your chances in life. Pardon my French.
Now you get an idea of how much of a scam this system really is, and obviously it brings a lot of awful consequences.
Overpopulation is definitely one of them. And it makes sense since we figure that putting people in jail is kind of the first reflex in this country. And also the fact that we talk about mass incarceration. More than 2.3 million people are locked up in the US, either in jail or prison. And that's as much as the entire population of Houston, Texas.
But this number is nothing compared to the 10 million people that go to jail each year. And this, for instance, is enough to fill up prison buses bumper to bumper from the East Coast to the West.
Let that sink in for a minute. Yes, it's awful, and it wouldn't be so dramatic if there were necessary infrastructures to house this population.
But there aren't, which leads to overpopulated prisons and jails. I mean, why should we build new prisons that will cost money when you can just pile up human beings?
But overpopulation is not the only trick to minimize the actual cost of mass incarceration. Oh, did we forget to tell you? It requires a lot of money to lock that many people up. The annual public prison budget in the US is around $81 billion.
And this money, you guessed it, comes from taxes, of course. So not only citizens have to largely support this budget, but people in charge are also doing whatever they can to hide the true cost of running prisons from most Americans.
Because running facilities is indeed expensive, and apparently Uncle Sam was not enjoying that. So he wondered, why not shift the cost from the facilities directly to the prisoners? I mean, how smart is that?
The main cost for any establishment is the workforce, and they found the perfect solution to drastically cut the cost. Make the prisoners work for the prison. Once again, well done, America.
And also pay them outrageously bad, if not at all in certain prisons. The average incarcerated people earn between 86 cents and $3.45 per day. Per day?
Yeah.
Whoa.
And that's not all. Work in prison is mandatory, with little regulation and oversight, and incarcerated individuals have few rights and protections. But making them work for their own care is not where the masquerade ends. Oh no.
When living in jail, you need to pay for everything that is not included. And since what is included is either of bad quality or in ridiculous quantities, let's stay within budget here. You probably have to buy things during your time in jail.
First option is the commissary. It's basically a store where you can find anything from food to hygiene products. And of course, prices may vary depending on your facility's type and location.
But since prisoners are not allowed money other than their utterly low wages, they mostly need to rely on their loved ones who can either transfer money onto a prison account or send them care packages.
But like everything else in prison, care packages are highly controlled and can be rather expensive. Prisons have restrictions on what they accept in their walls, so you're not even sure that the inmates will actually receive them.
That's where care packages companies come into play. They sell pre-made care packages filled with products that fit regulations, just like bail bond companies when there's money to be made.
But even if the catalog offers a nice selection, such regulation deprive prisoners access to fresh foods or family gifts.
And the same way, phone and video call from prison and jail typically cost $1 per minute. As a result, more than a third of families of incarcerated people fall into debt just to cover visitation costs.
So, the US found many ways to cut down the cost of running correctional facilities on a local scale, but they also found a way to do it on a much larger scale.
Why not sell prisons directly to private companies? This way, the government no longer shoulder nor the responsibility or the cost of running these facilities.
And what's usually the results of privatization? Well, less or no control over how the facilities are really operated, and this leads to lots of all sorts of abuse.
In order to achieve the modest savings, private prisons tend to cut back on staff costs and training, which usually results in the worst possible condition of detention.
Some of them also make profit by making business with other private companies to offer their workforce at very competitive rates. And if you think it looks a lot like slavery, you would be correct, because truth is, the APS and racism share a lot of history.
Speaking about history, do you remember that time when half the country went crazy on each other? That's right, folks. The sadly famous Civil War was mostly caused by the fact that Southern races did not want to stop enslaving black people.
Eventually, slavery was abolished, and with slaves' emancipation, plantation owners surprisingly found themselves lacking labor force to work the fields. So, they would contract prisoners, with the benediction of the state, of course.
And guess what? Most of these contracted convicts were black and arrested on either false accusations or for very minor infractions. The situation was not so different, even after the deadliest war of the US history.
These cowboys probably felt that their lifestyle was endangered, so they had to figure something out, just to protect themselves.
Introducing the American Constitution. The 13th Amendment of the US Constitution clearly states that neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment, shall exist within the United States.
Slavery, but make it legal. Now, that's a loophole.
And there are still people to say that the USA doesn't have a racism issue? Well, you're just bad at math then. Take this. Black people represent 40% of incarcerated people, when they only take up 13% of the American population.
Now, we all know that the foundation of the APS is, at best, biased, but truthfully, racist as fuck. Which definitely makes sense after this history refresh.
But clearly, these statistics just prove that the APS doesn't work. And despite the efforts made by the government to hide that, people are starting to realize it. This is why many movements are sparking up in the US to shine a light on these issues.
Lucky for us, there are many actually. This conversation is only getting started, and many propositions have already been implemented in some states or facilities.
One of the best, yet underused, available reforms to the American justice system is for the police to reduce the numbers of arrests that lead to jail bookings. Instead, police can cite people so that the defendant could wait for the trial at home without posting bail money or losing their job.
This method has proven its efficiency. Statistics show that people serving different types of sentences than incarceration had a way lower recidivism rate than people during prison time.
We're not taking away the crimes, we're simply noticing that actions taken towards criminality are just making things worse. And in order to end mass incarceration, perhaps we could look towards alternate sentences such as
electronic monitoring,
community service.
This system is, like many aspects of modern America, profoundly vicious, as it shows all signs of an institutional trap. And since many people actually in jail or prison aren't really a threat to society, as they mostly are drug offenders or other non-violent infractions, that would free up a lot of space.
Don't lock people up that don't need to be. It's as simple as that.
You can also change the way prisons are designed. The most effective prisons are the one that looks the least like it. In most countries, including the US, prisons prioritize punishment, but reoffending rates are lowest in facilities that choose alternate methods.
In certain facilities, prisoners can wear their own clothes, live in their own rooms, they have private showers and sometimes internet access. They can also cook their own meals and receive conjugal visits. As we saw earlier, it's a far cry from most correctional facilities in the US.
These prisons focus on rehabilitating prisoners through therapeutic interventions, employment, and education. Because ask yourself this one question: wouldn't people make different choices if they actually could?
Some might be worried that criminals actually get too comfortable. But dehumanizing someone who's made a mistake won't ever make things better. So let's be supportive to one another instead. Because judging is so easy It's almost like a natural reflex for some.
But when the moment has come for society to evolve towards a fairer system, one that will address issues directly, well, believe me, it's much more quiet.
Because let's not forget that even when prisons were first largely implemented, there were already people against it. It's been that way for so long and it's so rooted into our societies that we actually rarely take a step back on our methods.
But it's never too late to try something else. That's it for us, folks. We hope that we bring light on this topic, but truthfully, it felt that we could have done at least 10 videos on it. We'll probably be mentioning it again at some point, as the APS is deeply linked to many societal issues in the US.
You can also find the links to our sources within the description, and we'll see you again soon in the next episode of The American Way.
You can follow us on Instagram to vote for the next topic, and until then, stay tuned. Bye!
Bye-bye.